Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The city streets of Gotham hummed with an unnatural stillness. Lights flickered across the skyline, reflecting off the towering buildings that seemed to scrape the underbelly of the sky. It was a night like any other, yet the silence was heavier, more oppressive. Batman, perched atop the tallest building in the heart of Gotham, felt it before he saw it, a shift in the air, a disturbance like the city itself was holding its breath. A sharp beep echoed in his cowl, pulling his attention to the back computer. Bruce, you're going to want to see this. Marcel Asford's voice came through with its usual calm, but there was an edge to it tonight. Patch it through, Batman commanded. The screen in front of him lit up with a global broadcast. A figure dressed in a pristine white suit appeared, his face obscured by a sleek metallic mask that only left his eyes exposed, cold, calculating eye. Behind him, the symbols of various major cities flickered: New York, Paris, London, Central City. The voice that followed was smooth, articulate, and laced with a sinister calm. Good evening, world. My name is Dr. Lucius Crane. By now you've no doubt noticed the power surges, the disruption. Consider this your warning. I have planted nuclear devices in 7 of your most beloved cities. These devices are set to detonate in 24 hours unless the world's soar greatest minds and bodies step forward to face my ultimate test. You know who you are. The broadcast cut out, leaving a chilling silence in its wake. Bruce clenched his jaw, already anticipating the challenges ahead. Alfred, he growled, "You get the Flash on the line. We're gonna need him." Barry Allen, the Flash, had been racing through Central City, responding to reports of electrical disturbances when the call came in. He stopped mid-run, standing still long enough for the winds to settle around him. Batman's voice was all business, as usual. "Flash, we've got a problem," Barry quipped. Though his humor was short-lived, he'd seen the same broadcast. He knew what was at stake. Crane says challenges won't just be physical. He's ingenious. Batman continued. "You were going to need to be at your sharpest. Meet me at the back cave. We don't have much time." In less than a minute, Barry was there, the blur of red and gold coming to a stop just as Bruce descended from the upper level. The two heroes exchanged a nod. There was no need for formalities between them. Crane, the megalomaniac, Bruce began pulling up a digital display of the globe on the back computer. He's rigged nuclear devices in 7 cities, but I've been tracking power surges and anomalies over the past few weeks. His base of operations is likely in one of these locations. Great, Barry muttered, scanning the map, and here I was, hoping for a relaxing night. We're dealing with more than just bombs. Crane will have traps, puzzles. He wants to test us, push us to our limits physically and mentally. Crike, Bruce said, eyes narrowing. But there's a psychological angle too. He's shown obsessed with seeing us fail. So we don't, Barry replied, his tone shifting to something more serious. The first clue came from Gotham itself. A series of coded messages hidden within the city's electrical grid led them to an old, abandoned tech lab on the outskirts of the city. When Batman and Flash arrived, the lab seemed to pulse with a strange energy. The air was thick, charged with electricity and anticipation. As they entered, the door sealed shut behind them, and a voice crackled through the speaker. "Welcome, Batman, Flash. You've passed the first test by finding me now. The real challenge begins." Without warning, the floor beneath them shifted, transforming into a labyrinth of metal walls and moving platform. The walls pulsated with light, shifting in patterns too fast for the naked eye to track. It was a maze of shifting gears and mechanical traps. "Great, a maze," Flash muttered, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Ariel, you know I could just run through this, right?" Batman's voice was calm, calculated. This isn't just about speed. There are sensors. Move too fast, and you'll trigger the traps. We need to work together." Barry grinned despite the tension. "All right. Big guy. Lead the way. They moved cautiously through the maze, Batman calculating every step while Flash scouted ahead, using short bursts of speed to find the path without tripping the trap. Every now and then, the walls shifted unexpectedly, forcing them to adapt. As they delved deeper, the maze's complexity increased. There were puzzles embedded in the walls, complex patterns that had to be solved to proceed. Batman worked quickly, his mind racing to decipher the codes while Flash used his speed to manipulate the machinery faster than the eye could see. Crane has trying to wear us down, Batman muttered as they bypassed another trap. Well, he's testing our endurance. This isn't just a whole maze. It's a psychological attack. He's trying to make us doubt ourselves. Flash's response was quick, lighthearted. Well, he's picked the wrong guys for that. Just as they reached what seemed to be the final chamber, the floor fell away, plunging them into darkness. When the lights flickered back on, they found themselves in two separate rooms. A massive screen in front of them displayed Crane's masked face. Congratulations on making it this far, Hash's voice echoed in both rooms. But now, the real test begins. Each of you must solve your own puzzle. Succeed and you move forward, fail and the consequences will be catastrophic. In Batman's room, a series of wires, nodes, and glowing screens lit up the wall. It was a puzzle of logic and deduction, a mind game meant to test his intellect. Every wrong move would send a surge of electricity through the room, slowly lowering the ceiling toward him. In Flash's room, the challenge was physical. Multiple laser grids and moving walls closed in around him, each one speeding up with every passing second. His speed was both his advantage and his curse. Here, moved too fast, and he risked setting off deadly traps. But if he hesitated for too long, the walls would crush him. For Batman, time was ticking down as he analyzed the wiring. His fingers moved deftly across the controls, rerouting power, solving complex equations in his head. Each correct move bought him a few more seconds, but every mistake closed the gap between the ceiling and the floor. Flash, on the other hand, was a blur of motion. He darted between laser grids, calculating the angles in real time. But Crane's traps were designed to mess with his instincts, creating false paths that led to dead ends. He had to fight the urge to simply speed through, focusing instead on precision and control. Both heroes were pushed to their limits, but finally Batman cracked the code. The ceiling stopped its descent just inches from his head, and the door to his room slid open. At the same time, Flash executed a perfectly timed series of maneuvers, dodging the last set of lasers and reaching the end of his corridor. They emerged into a massive underground chamber, standing side by side once more. Well done, Crane's voice echoed through the cavernous space. But this is far from over. Your next trial awaits. The tension between Batman and Flash was palpable as they stood in the cavern, each of them catching their breath. Crane's taunts hung in the air, but there was no time to dwell on the psychological games. The stakes were too high. Suddenly, the chamber's walls began to shift again, revealing a series of doors, each leading to a different part of the facility. Crane's voice echoed once more. One of you must go left, and the other must go right. You want to be able to communicate. Your success depends on your ability to work alone and trust that the other is doing the same. Batman glanced at Flash. Their silent communication clear trust. It was something they had built over years of working together. But Crane's tests were designed to push that trust to its breaking point. Let's do this, Flash said, his voice steady. Without another word, they parted ways, each stepping through their respective doors. Batman stepped through the door and was immediately plunged into darkness. His instincts took over, and he remained perfectly still, allowing his eyes to adjust as he listened to the sounds around him. The faint hum of machinery, the drip of water from somewhere unseen, subtle, but telling. He wasn't truly alone in this room. He could feel eyes on him, though he couldn't pinpoint from where. A spotlight snapped on, illuminating the floor beneath him. Batman narrowed his eyes as he stepped into the circle of light. Surrounding him were cylindrical chambers, each holding an individual suspended in a strange liquid, their faces frozen in terror. Crane saw his work, no doubt. He was making his ultimate test personal. Batman, the voice dripped with satisfaction already. These are people you've ever failed. People who depended on you to save them, and you let them down. In this room, you will face your greatest fear, your own limitation. Every time you take a wrong step, another one of these will die. Batman remained silent, his mind working through the trap. He knew this was a ploy to break his focus. Crane was betting on him, hesitating, second-guessing every decision. But Bruce Wayne didn't operate that way. The floor beneath him began to shift. A grid of lights appeared, pulsing with a pattern he had only moments to decipher. If he stepped on the wrong tile, it would trigger a deadly outcome. Each wrong choice would set off a fatal chain reaction. He scanned the room, taking in every detail, calculating the probability of survival. The faces in the chambers remained frozen, in terror, reminding him of the stakes. There was no margin for error. But Bruce had long ago accepted the weight of his choices. Failure had always been part of his life, but so had adaptation. He stepped forward, confident and sure. The tile beneath his boot lit up green, and the room shifted again. He didn't hesitate as he continued across the grid, his mind already several steps ahead, solving the puzzle. Crane might have planned this to undermine his confidence, but he underestimated Batman's ability to thrive under pressure. When the final tile lit up green, the chamber doors hissed open. Crane's voice was back, impressive, but the physical test is yet to come. Before Batman could react, the ceiling above him began to drop, the walls moving inward, narrowing the space. It was a trap straight out of an Indiana Jones film, but Batman didn't panic. He grabbed his grappling hook, firing it at a metal beam just as the walls were within inches of him. He yanked himself upward, narrowly escaping the crushing force of the closing chamber. As he landed outside the room, he could hear Crane's mocking laughter. "Go ahead, Batman, run, but you can choose skate the truth. Your limitations will always catch up to you." Batman said nothing, focusing on finding Flash. He knew Barry would be going through his own version of this twisted challenge. Meanwhile, Flash was facing a different but equally harrowing test. He had entered a chamber that seemed innocuous, at first an empty space with a long, narrow bridge spanning across a deep chasm. At the far end, a glowing control panel pulsed, signaling the end of the trial. It seemed simple enough. Except for one small detail, the bridge was deteriorating rapidly, crumbling into the abyss as he stood there. If he didn't reach the other side in time, it would collapse completely, plunging him into darkness. Flash smirked. This was the kind of challenge he could handle. Speed was his game. He took a breath, ready to run when Crane's sighing voice echoed through the chamber. "Not so fast. Flash, this isn't about speed. Remember, if you rush, the entire bridge will collapse instantly. This is about control. Move too fast, and you'll lose everything. Move too slow, and it's over." The tension in Barry's sad body grew as he adjusted his stance. Crane's game was psychological, testing the very core of his identity. For someone like the Flash, whose instinct was always to run fast and save the day, controlling his speed felt unnatural. He took a cautious step, feeling the vibration of the bridge beneath his boot. Every movement caused a ripple that made the structure groan in protest. Too much force, and the entire thing would come down. He moved slowly, concentrating on every step. The control panel on the far side of the room felt miles away, though it was only a few feet. Time felt stretched, and with each careful movement, his anxiety spiked. He could hear Crane's laughter, taunting him in the silence. As Flash inched forward, the bridge beneath him began to shift more violently. The cracks in the foundation grew wider, and Barry had to fight the urge to break into a sprint. His heart raced, his body primed for speed, but his mind knew better. One wrong move, and it would all be over. With the last few steps before him, the bridge gave a final lurch, and Barry felt the structure buckle beneath him. With a burst of energy, he leaped forward, landing in a roll just as the bridge collapsed into the abyss behind him. The control panel flickered, and the door to the next chamber slid open. Flash exhaled, trying to slow his pounding heart. Crane's soft voice crackled through the speaker once more. "Very good, Flash, but we both know you've always had trouble slowing down, haven't you?" Flash grimaced, but said nothing as he raced through the next corridor, eager to find Batman and end this nightmare. The two heroes finally converged in the final chamber where Crane awaited them. He stood behind a thick glass wall, his metallic mask gleaming under the dim lights of the room. Above him, a digital clock ticked down, each second bringing the world closer to annihilation. "You've done well," Crane said, his voice smooth and detached. "But there's one last test. The world hangs in the balance, and only one of you can save it. One of you must sacrifice yourselves to disarm the bombs. The other will live with the consequences." Batman stepped forward, his voice low and steady. "Treat no more games, Crane. This ends now." Crane tilted his head, amused. "Oh, but this is the ultimate game, Batman. The game of sacrifice. Who will it be? The man who moves too slowly, or the man who moves too fast?" Flash clenched his fists, his body humming with energy. "Find you not getting in our heads, Crane. We'll both make it out of here, and you re-enter jail." Crane chuckled, the sound cold and hollow. "Confidence is admirable, Flash. But you can't escape the choice. One of you must push the button. One of you must die. The countdown continued, the seconds slipping away. Batman and Flash exchanged a glance, and unspoken understanding passing between them. They had faced impossible odds before, and they knew there was always another way. Batman moved to the console, his fingers flying over the controls as he hacked into Crane system. Flash stood by, ready to act in a heartbeat, trusting Batman's plan. The clock ticked closer to 0, and for a moment it seemed like there might not be enough time. Then, with a final keystroke, Batman overrode the system, freezing the countdown just as it reached 1. The room fell silent, the threat of annihilation vanishing in an instant. Crane's mask twitched, his calm demeanor faltering for the first time. "Trey, impossible. Trey," he whispered. "Trey, you can. Trey, have to." Batman turned to face him, his expression hard. "You underestimated us, Crane. This was never about sacrifice. It was about control, and you lost." Before Crane could react, Flash phased through the glass wall, grabbing the villain by the collar and pinning him to the ground in a blur of motion. "Barrett, game over," Ty Barry said with a smirk. With Crane subdued, Batman called in the authorities to deal with the bombs. Gotham and the world were safe for now. As they stood in the wreckage of Crane's lair, Batman glanced at Flash. "Tell if you did good." Flash grinned. "You too, big guy, for someone who likes to brood in the shadows." Batman allowed himself the faintest of smiles. Let's get out of here." Together they walked out of the chamber, leaving behind the remnants of Crane's twisted test. They had faced the ultimate challenge and emerged victorious, their trust in each other stronger than ever.